What a moment. Adnan Syed walking out a free man after his murder conviction was tossed, and it was the prosecutor's idea. By the way, Marilyn Mosby, at the time, the former state attorney for Baltimore, Maryland. What a conclusion, right? The Serial podcast is the true crime podcast that put podcasting like on the map, became a phenomenon, and then he's released. But then, subsequent to that, all of a sudden, things turned around a little bit. Take a listen. This is Mallory Sophostai from our great affiliate WMAR with the rest of the story.
The Maryland Court of Appeals is essentially ordering a do-over of the hearing that vacated Syed's conviction last fall. Syed was first convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend Hae-Min Lee back in 2000. That conviction was vacated in October when former state's attorney Marilyn Mosby filed a motion to vacate after an investigation by her office uncovered new evidence undermining that conviction. However, Hae-Min Lee's brother, Young Lee, said his rights were violated when he wasn't given enough time to attend that hearing in person. Lee lives in California. The state notified him one business day before the hearing was scheduled. The Maryland Court of Appeals issued its decision siding with Lee. In a 2-to-1 decision, Judge Graff wrote, quote, "Because the court violated Mr. Lee's right to notice of and his right to attend the hearing on the state's motion to vacate, we have the power and obligation to remedy that injury. That remedy is a new legally compliant, transparent hearing on the motion to vacate where Mr. Lee is given notice of the hearing that is sufficient to allow him to attend in person." The court said this mandate would be delayed for 60 days to allow both parties time to decide how they want to proceed. We've reached out to the state's attorney's office. We're told they're reviewing the decision and will allow the appeals process to play itself out. Syed and his legal team can appeal this decision to the Maryland Supreme Court.
And they have. But what does that mean? What is going on with this case? It's like watching a tennis match. It goes from here to there, back and forth. Need some help. Let's bring in our special guest to discuss these new details. Joining us from Annapolis, Maryland, reporter for the Associated Press, who's been all over this thing. Brian Witte is with us. Brian, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Where are we right now with all of this?
Well, you're right. There really are. It really is like a tennis match and the ball going back and forth. A lot of twists and turns. Where we are right now is the Supreme Court of Maryland is weighing whether or not to take the appeal that has been filed by Mr. Syed's attorney. And they have put a stay on the court order by the Intermediate Appellate Court, which reinstated his conviction. So his conviction is kind of in a state of there's no action on it. We're just waiting for the Supreme Court to decide whether they are going to hear the case, and then we will be waiting for their decision. His lawyer, Mr. Syed's lawyer, has raised several legal issues that she says are new issues that should be decided by the court in this moving forward.
Do prosecutors, the state attorney's office down there, you have a new state attorney, right? Marilyn Mosby is gone, is my understanding. Does the new state attorney agree that this should be vacated? Or does the new state attorney see it differently than Mosby, that maybe it was a political ploy by her, a little diversion from her own federal criminal trial? What's going on down there with that?
You're right. There really were a lot of those things in the backdrop with the previous state's attorney. That was just before the election, and you're right. There is that other legal case involving her that makes some people conjecture about what some of the motivations might have been. But the new state's attorney, Mr. Ivan Bates, has not really said anything about the case. He's waiting for the appeals process to play out.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Now, the basis for the original motion to vacate was there actual alleged exculpatory evidence, like evidence that the prosecutor hid or that no one knew about, some new evidence that showed that he was 100% innocent? Or was there just some evidence that could have raised a reasonable doubt?
You know, there really are a lot of things swirling in the backdrop there, and some of these things are issues that were raised in the very podcast that brought so much attention to this. What the prosecutors were focusing on was they have contended that that the prosecutors did not share adequate evidence that with his lawyers at the time, and that it was unfair for him, his legal team not to have that. And that includes ideas of possible other suspects who could have played a role in this. And then another thing that came up too, after Marilyn Mosby decided not to move forward with new charges, they pointed to new DNA evidence. There had been DNA evidence that had been found, and they ran new tests, they said at the time when they said they weren't going to move forward with charges, and that DNA evidence did not include any of Mr. Syed's. So there's that aspect to it as well.
That was on his shoe.
That
was on her shoes? Was that on?
Yes, yes. And then there were other issues too. I mean, that were old aspects of the case. Faulty cell tower evidence that was not reliable was an aspect of that. So there's a lot of this was explored in the podcast, and has been people have been hearing about it since that was going back in 2014.
And one final question before we run out of time, Brian. The not sharing the evidence. Did Marilyn Mosby speak with the original prosecutor about that? Because I thought I read some quotes from him that he claims that they did share it, and his original attorney is dead, so that attorney can't say anything, right?
Yeah, there's been some murkiness in that area. That's kind of not been something that's been hugely discussed publicly. There's sort of a he said, she said aspect to all of that. What was known, what wasn't known, what was shared, what wasn't shared. And there's also some elements of notes that were read and interpreted, and how different people interpreted who and what were exactly mentioned in these notes. So there's a lot of confusion on that point, to be honest.
Absolutely. This is the most complicated, confusing, procedurally, factually, everything about this case. So we appreciate your time tonight. Brian Witte from the Associated Press. I'm sure we'll be speaking again about this, so thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, let's bring back in our think tank. Ann Bremner, Rick King, Michael Sterling. All right. Rick, are you chomping at the bit? Are you chomping at the bit right now? What's on your mind?
I would say the word I would use is trepidation, but go ahead.
Go ahead. Give me your thoughts about where we are in this whole thing, and what is going to be justice in this case.
So can I tell you my first thought, listening to everything that just took place right now? My first thoughts to me are, we live in a society where we say we would rather have 9 guilty people go free than 1 innocent person go to prison. And so I'm concerned about the level of evidence that whether there was some Brady violations, whether there was some exculpatory DNA evidence, those things are all disconcerting to me. And so I look at those things.
I don't know if it was exculpatory DNA evidence. They said there was no DNA from the defendant on her shoes, and somebody else's DNA was on her shoes.
Right. Well, whether or not DNA would show up in her shoes is a question. I don't know. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, I think that this gentleman is entitled to real justice and a real indication of whether or not he's guilty of this crime or not. And right now, for me, I'm just concerned about what happened back then, because you hear these things, and actually you don't even hear them. You see them today, where there are miscarriages of justice that take place, and I'm concerned, and I really don't at this point, whether or not the old state attorney had a political agenda moving forward with what she did, really is of no consequence to where we are right now. Because she made a decision, she vacated the conviction. And here in Florida, we have Marsy's Law, which says the victim has an absolute opportunity to come forward and be a part and have a real participation in these types of proceedings. But the proceeding that we had was a motion by the prosecutor to vacate the prosecution. So the prosecutor was moving to vacate. The defense lawyer was, we agree, and if that's where we are, the procedural remedy for fixing this is to allow the victim an opportunity to be heard. But at the end of the day, the prosecutor has said and is saying that this isn't a prosecution that we believe should stand any longer. And so the real remedy, I don't think, changes the outcome of what we have.
All right, we only have a short amount of time, but Mike Sterling, got to hear from you on this one.
Yeah, Vinnie, I mean, what we're hearing procedurally is nothing about the innocence or guilt of the defendant. It's all about a notice issue, right? So the question is whether under victim rights, under Baltimore state law, lots of states have them, victims are entitled to notice before substantial hearings. I've got cases here in Georgia, before there's a bond hearing, the victim's got to be notified. The question is that the appeals court was trying to figure out how do you remedy a failure to properly notify someone, a victim who has rights under state law. And this is what they said was the remedy. Now the Supreme Court will have to weigh in on it because I think it'll be a significant decision in terms of how victims are treated going forward and whether or not failure to notify a victim is such a material issue that you have the authority to vacate something significant like this, which is a conviction being overturned on a motion by the prosecution.